Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the engagement room session 18 with
Woo.
Charice Manor. Thank you, Charice, again for being our speaker tonight. Again, thank you because we had a change and Charice stepped up, and we had been talking for several months about some content that she might like to deliver. And got it together, and it's been, the content she's made, I think is fantastic. I think you all are really going to enjoy it. And of course, it's always very interesting that I'm a PC person. I used to be a Mac person. Charisse is definitely a Mac person. And so we're going to see what kind of stuff that she produces from her MacBook, because I sometimes I miss those Apple days. I have my iPhone and tablet all day long, but I haven't worried about, using a MacBook and forever, but iOS is iOS, right? All right, then. Well, let's get into my introduction here of our speaker. So, Charisse is an American author. She's also a U.S. combat veteran like myself, and has been involved with a nonprofit faith-based ministry helping women and girls identify their purpose and potential. Right now, she is very well known for her children's fiction books. One is called The Secret Ingredient. The other one is Little Miss Tomboy. Charisse holds a master's degree in business administration from the University of Phoenix, and has also worked for many years as an elementary and middle school educator. She's an active Toastmaster member and has served in several leadership positions over the last few years, to include District 8 director over all of the Southern Illinois area and most of Missouri. Her speech tonight is called Uncover Your TED Talk. So please welcome Charice Manor, Uncover Your TED Talk.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to share at Engagement Room Session 18. I appreciate you all being here. Would you all believe that I was one of the first people that Tim talked to about the engagement room, and I said, I'm ready, I'm in. And he asked me, give me a topic. What date? He gave me about 6 dates, and I said, uh, uh, yeah, next time, next time, next time. I I really wanted to come up with something that was like super powerful and impactful. And I think the more I kept taking to decide, I end up letting doubt creep in on what I wanted to do. And then last week, I mentioned to him, I'm ready. And he was like, okay, well, you got to wait until, was it August or September? And I was like, darn. But I already knew exactly what I wanted to say. And I want to tell you exactly what I also needed to hear. And this is what I needed to hear. Charisse, you have an impactful, thought-provoking, action-driven message within you. Actually, you have several. So I would tonight want to impress that upon you that you have an impactful, thought-provoking, and action-driven message within, probably several more. But have you ever listened to someone speak and when they walked away, you almost remember what they said verbatim? You still remember it, even like weeks later. So it inspired you in some kind of way, it challenged you in some kind of way, or possibly it just changed the way you think. That is the power of the meaningful message. And that's the message you have inside. So when I think about these type of messages, I immediately went, I know, TED Talk. Is there anybody that does not know what a TED Talk is? Never heard of them. Okay, great. When I saw that, I said, if they don't know what a TED Talk is, basically, I had to look up the acronym. I knew what it was in theory, but the acronym stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. And it now has spanned across multiple disciplines. But when I thought about the TED Talk, I even said to myself, oh, you can't do TED Talk. And that little voice, you can't do TED Talk. Yes, you can, because you have that meaningful message. Contrary to the misconception that I believed at the time was that TED Talks are for experts, they're for celebrities, they're for scientists, best selling number one, like on someone's list type of authors, or some kind of influencer with millions and millions of followers. But I have since learned that is not true because TED Talks are not really about fame. They're about ideas, lessons learned, transformation, and truths that help a person become or do something different or better. And so, because of that, that's how I know that you all have something in you. So, tonight, I would like for us to discover our own message, rediscover your message, discover your jam. So my generation says our jam. What's our jam? Or the story that we can tell because someone else needs to hear it. So let me go back and share. Does everyone have visual of the PowerPoint? Okay, so uncover your TED Talk. Your story matters. By show of hand or virtual hand, how many of you would agree that life has taught you something? Thank
One,
you.
two, three, four,
Thank you. Me too. My hands up. We
five,
all have
six.
our
Yep.
stories, and our stories matter. Sometimes our lessons come through success, sometimes they come through pain. It really doesn't matter how we learn the lesson. In essence, what matters is that we learn from it. But our stories may have been about rebuilding from failure, how to ask for help, surviving grief, how to lead, how to forgive. The beautiful thing is that even though that was your personal lesson, that same lesson could be someone else's breakthrough. So, what if that lesson was your TED Talk? So, I want you to start thinking about what's on here. There's a struggle, there's a turning point, and then there's the insight. That's what we're looking for. In your lesson, you're looking for that challenge, and then that moment where things changed, and then the insight, what you gained from that. Most people automatically say, I don't have anything important to say. My case, I know I have something important to say. I just didn't know what part of the important pieces I wanted to say. I thought about my books. I thought about my personal life. I thought about my nonprofit. I thought about my church, my publishing, the career, my faith, and I got stuck. I think I even told Tim about two topics for tonight's session before I decided. You guys, hear me on this, that the message is usually hidden in the place where your life has changed. I keep pointing at the life lesson. Keep that in the back of your mind. Maybe your lesson is hidden in a struggle, in your healing from the struggle, in your leadership, your parenting, your adulting, your mistakes, your success, faith, survival, transformation. But the question that I have for you is not, do you have a message? I know you do. The real question is, have you recognized your message? So I hope by now, if you're taking notes or following along on the workshop portion of this, you're starting to write down some of your lessons. Your lessons are for the audience after you have lived them. And we want to make sure that our connection with the audience, even if it's a short amount of time or long, it is a deep connection. And we want to do that through vulnerability, your relatability or your connection with them, and your purpose. And I'll just add two more things to these for impact is your honesty in sharing that lesson, as well as how authentic you bring your story to the table. People are looking for these things and not perfection. And also, I just want to say that your story doesn't have to be dramatic. Yes, there are lots of charismatic speakers and they give you the bows and the booms, but yours does not have to do that to make an impact. Sometimes even the smallest lesson changes someone's life forever. Okay, I would like for you to tell me if you've watched a TED Talk, have you noticed like what makes them different? Is anybody willing to kind of share if they've seen it, what made the TED Talk different for you?
Trisha?
I, I see a hand.
It's Trisha.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a fan of TED Talks, and typically two things that draw me in. It's always the topic. So as I'm scrolling through, that gets my attention. And from the onset of the presentation, they draw you in with some type of attention grabbing story or something that just makes you sit for a moment before they lead into their topic.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Sandra?
The raw honestness. They're
Yeah,
just they're honest. They go up there, they talk, they don't perform. And I feel like they're talking right to me.
yeah, I like that too. Thank you. Amy, I see a hand.
Yes, the relatability of the personal story, how I see their stories relating to situations in my life or situations that have happened to people close to me that I love.
Yes, thank you. That's kind of what I was looking for. They appeal to our emotion, they're story driven, they're conversational, and for me, I believe that they are transformational. When I listen to a talk, I come away with something. But the key to the talk being able to do that and create that impact is that it's surrounded by one central idea. This one idea, by holding on to that to make the impact there, it helps people remember. They'll be able to repeat the message and they'll be able to apply it to their life. So think about your impact in surrounding like this one idea is if your audience can repeat it back in one or two sentences, then you have done your job. Trisha, is your hand still up? Or is that from the, oh, thank you. Okay, let's try to find your thing. You probably didn't come to really do any work, but I would love if you stayed with me and participated in this portion. I just put these three questions here because this might help you start to narrow down because I know we've all lived a lot of life. What's something that if you could right now put down what changed my life or what lesson did I often repeat or what do people constantly come to me for? What would that thing be? Just kind of jot it down. Don't overthink it like I did and get in decision paralysis, but just write that thing down. Like something that changed my life was military service. So I know there's an idea somewhere in there. I experienced burnout as an elementary school teacher. There is definitely some life lessons there. Becoming a parent, whoo-wee, I'm still in that journey. So there's a lot of things. Grief, losing someone, losing something, having to start over, and then faith. Those are some of the things that I would throw out for me. But possibly it could be losing a job or overcoming insecurities or setting boundaries. So think about that. And then when you're looking at like what kind of lesson do you often repeat? Some of us have to go in circles until we actually get it. Accepting failure would be one for me. Like I don't accept failure well because I should be perfect. Now, I know I just mentioned earlier that there's no perfection, but I do strive to do my best and I have to realize that my best may not ever be perfect. So I have to accept that. Another one that I think humans struggle with is being humble. We inadvertently want to show how we are and what we've done and how we've arrived. But humility is often a softer course to make more impact. Taking responsibility for anything. That's a lesson right now that I'm trying to teach my son. There is something in that. And then what do people mostly come to you for? Do they come to you for advice? What are they seeking advice on? Are they looking for your coaching, your wisdom, your perspective? They just looking for a little guidance, a nudge? What is that thing that people are just drawn to ask you for? So out of those three questions, hopefully you've narrowed down something because your talk is going to kind of like be married to what you survived or what lessons you learned and what the audience is going to need. I kind of narrowed it down to this formula of ideal, story, transformation. Does everybody have their lesson? Just give me a yes, a nod, a something, or something you're thinking about. Okay. So out of that thing that you've experienced, what would be the one thing that you want people to remember? For me, in my example that I prepared for this was that failing at something is not failure. Because I definitely believe that I was a failure because I would fail at something, and especially if I failed multiple times trying to achieve something. But failing at things is not failure. So that's the one thing I would want somebody to come away knowing from my talk. The story portion is what happened. So telling my story, that's where I would connect, Trisha, like getting you engaged in what happened to me. We like to know what happened to other people. We like to know what was going on with their life. And thank God it's your life and not mine. But guess what? I can take away your lesson. What challenged me and what changed? What happened to me is I failed my contracting officer warrant board. I've gone to boards a lot in the military. I don't know what happened. I got shook and I got very nervous and fumbled on the questions. But we prepare for this. You prepare, you study, you take a written test, you take the board, and you sit before this panel. I got up knowing I did not do as well as I could. And the challenge was really just articulating what I knew in my head. It's so automatic to do the work and then have to speak on it. I was fumbling. So what changed? Well, what changed was my demeanor of myself. I truly thought, man, this is not for you. Maybe this is where you stop. You don't need to go any further. Quit. And that's how I walked away. And then the transformation. Why does this matter to you? Why does this matter to the audience? What part of your story, remember going back to the idea, why would the audience care about the thing you want them to remember? And for me, it really was because I learned that my own stinking thinking was getting in my way. I had to be reminded that failing at a thing does not put a label on me as a person. And it took going through some of my board questions and showing how well I did do and how very close I came. Once I got the feedback, that was important. So walking away and not knowing, I could have still walked around, oh, I'm defeated. It's hopeless. Forget it. Those questions were extremely hard. But getting the feedback was the moment that I said, you know what? I didn't mess up as much as I did, but I missed a critical part in one piece of contracting that it is imperative that we know to stay out of jail or to not create a violation against the law. So having that information created the transformation for me. Let me make sure. Another note about the transformation. What we want is for people to think differently, to feel inspired. We want them to take action or see themselves differently. So when you're looking at that idea, how will, in the end, you transform your audience to think differently, feel inspired, take action, or see themselves differently? I've added this piece, a little Toastmaster piece here about when you are delivering your talk. Your talk can be 2 minutes. Your talk can be 12 minutes. It can be 25, an hour long. These are not the only, but these will really help with giving the TED style talk. Because as we said earlier, we want it to be conversational. It should be like you're talking to one partner across the table from you at lunch or dinner. You're saying something. You want to talk with the audience so that they're always with you throughout the talk and not at them. Creating those silent moments that really give time for the audience to absorb what you're saying and stay with you on the path of where you're going. Some people may start anticipating what you're going to say, but keep the eagerness for where you're going. An example, I think most people on this call would understand how to use the pauses, but for me, I would say something in my talk is the hardest moment of that board was accepting that I did not pass. I feel like taking my time with that is pivotal because I'm trying to set up the transformation moment. Obviously, we hope to be given these talks in person, so you wouldn't be behind the screen. So this next comment is about your focus movement when you are standing on the platform and how you will use your body. I just have one thing that has really helped me for when I'm standing in person to not pace or appear very nervous with my movement is to actually build your movement into your talk. Right where you would like to step forward until it becomes natural. Put where you want to raise your hand or show numbers or whatever it is as far as your gestures within the talk until it becomes normal. Just be intentional with your movement so that it doesn't detract. Because if you look at those TED type talks, they have very little movement. Very little movement, just a few hands, sometimes left or right. They do pan the room, but they build that movement within the talk. Using vocal variety, of course, this one is just changing your pace, your tone, raising, lowering your volume. If it's something you're super passionate about, you may sound angry, but it's the passion coming out of you. Just be vulnerable and allowing your emotions not to take over your talk, but to be present in the talk. Because yeah, that really bothered me. I failed. It really did bother me. I was distraught, but I recovered. And then afterwards, I can have this smile about how I'm going to go back to that board. I now have a new date and I'm going. And finally, just being authentic. Being your authentic self. You can't repeat any other person. We like you for you. I'm saying we on behalf of the whole world. We like you for you. Your experience is what we want to see, hear, and feel. And it could take a little bit of getting out your comfort zone. But if you are naturally a softer spoken person, you may just have to say, I need to write where I need to raise my voice in there. I need to write where I need to move closer to the camera or the audience so that they know I'm telling them this is something you need to know. But just be you. Because I think once we lay off the layers of trying to impress and be perfect, then we can actually deliver something from our heart that's super passionate. And you'll find you might come outside of your own self in that. Just remember, your speech doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be impactful. Okay, so I have these, I don't know if you can see all four of the prompts here. I think it's kind of cut off. In building your talk, I felt like these four prompts are very helpful into just shaping like that central idea. One life lesson, one lesson life has taught me is dot, dot, dot. And then you can go from there. What do I want the audience to know about that? What story on this do I want to tell? Excuse me. People really need to hear this. I have a lot of these kind of topics. People really need to know that they should put their blinker on before they merge because they don't have the right of way. There is something that I could probably do a talk on that, but we all have these people need to hear this type of moments. What if you could write that talk that actually changes how people move on the road? If I gave a TED talk, it would be about what would your TED talk be about? My audience would leave feeling inspired, ready, to go plant more trees, to go help a homeless person. My audience would feel better about themselves and knowing that, yep, you can fail at something. Doesn't define you. It's what you do after. Get up and do something. So does anyone at this point have anything they would like to share through your lesson? Has anyone even decided on a lesson? Is there anyone who would be willing to share a lesson they learned and what they would like the audience to take away from their own lesson? I heard a bubble. Trisha, I see your hand.
Sure. I'd be happy to share a lesson learned. So can I use the other slide you had up before?
Oh,
The
let me go
one right
back.
before that? I mean, is
How
that,
do I go back? Yes, you can.
oh,
This one?
oh, no, the one before that where you kind of had the idea. Okay, like, is this what
Okay.
you're meaning? Is this what you're meaning?
Yes.
Okay. So
Sorry,
one thing, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna
One
mute
thing,
myself.
one thing I want people to remember is that any stumbling block can be turned into a stepping stone. And for me, after more than a decade in foster care, the one system that saved my life, but let me go as I transitioned from care into adulthood, forced me to rethink how I looked at the system, and I leaned into the word foster. And the transformation for me was turning foster into a memorable, catchy mantra, which has now become how I move through life. So if you can remember that you can always find and fulfill opportunities that will strengthen you, teach you, empower you, and restore or release whatever you need whenever you're stuck, that is a very powerful, forward thinking decision making tool. And so today, more than 30 plus years later, I take a lot of pride in helping others find opportunities that can strengthen, teach, empower, and restore or release what they need to move forward when they are stuck.
Wow, thank you. That's really good. I would love to hear your final talk on that. Where are you speaking next?
I just did a live pitch on Facebook Monday night and won um, across a bunch of media platforms. So it just never know where it's going to come up.
Sounds
So,
like Trisha needs to come on and be a speaker for season 2.
Yes,
oh,
sounds like it. Thank you for sharing. Amy gave a thumbs up. I can see that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go. I will say that as I wrap up, one thing I noticed that TED Talks are not is they're not heavily teaching. You'll learn in the talk. So your TED style talk, I'm going to say TED style because we're not going on TED Talk, but you do have your own platform, and I expect that you will use your platform to impact, to provoke thought, to drive action. But you teach where you need to, and then have that call of action. Having a lot of points. Remember that one central idea. And if you do have statistics, try to keep it to just one, maybe two, because we really want our audience to remember what we say. We want them to be able to go out and do something or influence in another way. And also practice. Please practice. I do believe that when you want to be authentic and you're giving your talk, you want to be able to do it, not sound robotic, like you're remembering from the paper, or just you need to put your personality in there. I think that's where the authenticity comes. But you don't want to sound just super rehearsed to where you can't allow yourself to move within your words, if that makes any sense. Okay. This is just a reminder of a few things that we said, like reflecting on those moments. Identify the emotion that you want to appeal to with the audience. and then what can I show them out of my lesson? And then you have to do the whole beginning, middle, and end and form your revelation. Of course, that's the work part of drafting it, but knowing where you're going is critical and important. All right, so from story to stage, this is again another just a small little recap. Write it down, put it on paper, and let it flow. When you first start, just let it flow. Here's my idea. Here's another angle. And I'll just like, if I could use Trisha. Trisha has a central idea that she could have many stories within. So for one audience, she may have a story about engaging for assisting and how they can help for people aging out. And another story she could talk about survival of aging out. So underneath one central idea, you're hitting different, you can have multiple stories within there. So it just be meaning doing the same thing for each of them. Okay. So earlier I said that the audience, they need to hear your lesson. And sometimes whenever you're speaking about what it is you come through or learned, you also need to hear it again too. And when you do hear it again, the revelation that you get from someone else being able to touch on that, to be able to connect with you on it, will give you more esteem and more esteem to go back and say, what other story do I have? And you never know what connection and bridges you build. But I just want you to know that your lesson plus your voice equals your TED Style Talk. And that would conclude. And I'll turn it back over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Charice. Thank you so much. Let's give our speaker a round of applause.
Thank
That was an
you.
excellent breakdown of the TED process. And I know Karen Cup came in here. She did a TEDx down at SIU Carbondale just in the recent past as well. And we've had a couple of TED speakers, on the engagement
Mhm.
route, which I feel very, very blessed to have. So, okay, so Sharice, can you turn off your
Yes,
share?
I'm
And then what
sorry.
I'll
Yes, I
do is
can.
I'll open it up to multi-speaker mode so that way we can go into the Q&A session here. So, all right. So, who is our first person that wants to throw another question at our
Oh, hi,
speaker?
Karen.
Yeah, you can raise your hand, whoever's next. We're watching it here. Sandra, all right.
This is actually a question I should ask at the end, but it's going to bother me the entire time and distract me from anything you say. But do you find in telling your own story makes you feel better about yourself?
I do. I do. I I feel two things. Like I feel like an emotional release because I'm not just holding it in, but then I'm always surprised that they received it differently than I thought they would. And once they like, oh, that was, I'm saying the smallest little thing, and I helped. I'm like, that really helped. Okay. And it just really lifts me up to say, I should say this again. I need to talk about this again because it helped one person, so it could help more. I'm working up to actually getting coaching to do an actual TED Talk. But I know that you don't necessarily need that platform. This engagement room is a platform.
Mhm.
Your own Facebook Live is a platform. Conversation with someone, if you get 30 seconds, we all know the elevator pitch, it could lead to a longer spiel for someone, and there's your talk. I just want us to be ready. Let's start writing down those central ideas. Let's start adding our story to it and being ready.
Yep, exactly. Venue of
Thank you.
delivery, right?
And of course, the delivery.
Yep. Okay, Karen, Karen's got her hand up.
Yes, Sharice, this was awesome. I had just gotten home and I didn't have the Zoom link and I found it on Facebook Live and I went, "Oh my gosh." So just want to
Thank you.
thank you and thanks Tim for sending me the
Mhm.
link. Um, as he said, I have done a TED Talk and one of the things, I mean, I just loved all the elements you gave. That I took lots of notes because there is a kind of just a whole preparation and exploration to this. What inspired you to do this as your choice topic tonight? Because I think it's really valuable and you're so well delivered.
Mhm.
I'm so glad you asked me that. I kind of alluded to it in the beginning, my own self-doubt. I fumbled around with like, what do I say? I told Tim, I'm ready. I want to do it. I just don't really know what I want to say that would be impactful. And last week it was, I said, I'm ready. I need to tell them what I'm telling myself. And it's the fact that you have the messages, get them out.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, I need to tell myself how to get them out in the way that I wanted to do it because I do aspire to do something. And then I went back and told myself, you don't have to be on TED, Sharice. You don't have to do it. You have books you need to talk about. You have a nonprofit you need to talk about. And there's a reason you built that nonprofit. So it was kind of my own self-doubt. I was like, well, if this is what I'm saying to myself, I'm going to say it to the audience and we'll just be taking this journey together.
We did a
Yep.
great job and
And we're
and
glad we're here. Definitely.
yeah.
Thank
Definitely.
you.
All right, Trisha's got her hand up.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm a sponge for learning. I like take it in. So I've been on calls with Charice and Toastmasters. We've heard each other
Mhm.
speak. But I got this link maybe a few minutes before I joined. And the reason I got it because I said I saw TED Talk. Like it immediately got my attention. I didn't know what to expect. So great move in that. I have
Thank
been
you.
aspiring to be to do a TED Talk. Like, and I'm in a coaching space too. But one of the things that moves through my work is anytime I'm in a situation where it's tough, I lean into a word, no pun intended, and I redefine it. And so, Sharice, as I was listening to you, right, that redefined word for me came up, and I redefined TED, and I can share that later. But my question for you is you shared so many great nuggets around how to prepare for a TED Talk and, things that we can do. But if you had one thing that you would share from your bag of nuggets, what would it be as far as the first thing to do after this call? If you were on that TED Talk journey, one thing that you would start with.
My own personal journey, you mean?
Well, it doesn't, I mean, just from the TED Talk piece, right? So you did a lot of research and just from being a speaker and Toastmasters, if someone was going to pick one thing to start on a TED Talk journey, just based on everything you shared, what would be that one thing?
I I I want to say the first thing that comes to my mind because that is exactly what that is my answer.
Mhm.
Pick that first thing that I am super passionate about and work on that. Because honestly, what I'm thinking and feeling right now is where I really need to be. That's the moment that I'm in. So I need to start working on that moment. And I would just start jotting down, just start letting it flow and start writing. Could formulate all the things later, but what is it I want to say and start jotting it down. So
Mhm.
I may do that after I'm done.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for that. I need to do that actually.
Of course, that's the benefit of this. You're going to have the video to go through and do whatever you want. It's like, oh yeah, I did say that. So, you'll have that there. So now I want to throw a question at you because you brought up, when you were looking at being a contracting officer, and I know there's a lot to that. I used to be a contracting officer representative when it comes to, my military service. And there's a lot of moving parts, especially when it comes to federal procurement, especially military procurement. And is there anything that like in this space, this process of building up for a TED that you could take from that detailed process to to be a contracting officer, even though you didn't make it? I mean, is there a takeaway that's prevalent now in this process that you're in?
Well, I prepared to give you guys my pitch or my, let me just read this. I have written it down. I had gotten to the point where I've already told you all that I failed and I walked out the room. And I had the conversation where I got the feedback. And that was the conversation that said, failing at something doesn't make you a failure. Because when I did talk to my mom and my friends and told them, hey guys, I was so prepared, so I thought, nobody looked at me the way I was looking at me. Nobody said, oh man, you suck. You failed at that? How could you do that? None of them said that to me. They all were like, dang, you'll get it next time. You're so smart. Find out what you did wrong. And everybody was the other way, but I was in my own ear. And what I said was that family, that community, it just it told me that I have the opportunity to identify my weaknesses now and make a comeback. So now I'm looking to come back stronger than I was. But my final thought, if I would have given this as like an example for the idea, story, and transformation, I basically wrote failure tried to hold me hostage. Failing that panel board tried to convince me that one stumble defined my capability. It said because I missed it this time, I was a failure. I almost attached my identity to a moment. But failing at something isn't an event. It is not a final decision, not a final decision on my life. So I scheduled a new date and I refused to let failure be my final word. So that would have been my finishing portion of what I was going to share for my idea, story, and transformation. The process in itself, there's a lot to relate to building your impact, but it's just boggled down in military regulation.
Oh yeah.
So,
Well, it's on the path to wisdom too, because every not you can't say a mistake is failure, and you can't call every failure a mistake. They just kind of happen along the way. And if you can take anything positive and continue, that's the most important thing that anyone can do. So, all right, our next question, Mark Bean.
hi,
Well,
Mark.
hi there. Since we're talking about failure, don't you believe that you learn a lot from that though? Don't you learn every time you do something the wrong way? Don't you learn that, hey, that didn't work. Let's try this way. Or I don't remember who it was that said they failed at something 30 times before they figured the right way to get it done. So I'm not sure that you really actually ever fail if you don't give up and you learn how to get it done the right way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I'm going to put failure on a little box and then step on it like it's a step, put another box and step on it. But I do agree. Failure does lead to success. It's just making sure that you see it that way. Like I was like,
Uh,
Sharice, maybe you should act like you're a scientist because they expect to fail at their experiments to get to their answer. That's the way they think. Whereas I want to think that I want to get it right the first time. And that's my poor personality. So yes, I am learning to accept it and see it as a lesson that I can grow from.
I thought that was very impactful, so I thought you did a great job with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate all of you listening to me.
Well, of course. So who's our next question? Or who has the next question? Michael, Linda, I don't know who's in the bolds label there. You came in. Or David or Linda. Well, all right then. Well, I'll ask another question in regards to your books. So I'm a published author myself, but I have a very specific purpose for that. You had your direction with your nonprofit, and then basically your ministry work there. So what was your direction on writing the two books that you have published right now?
The first book that I wrote, The Secret Ingredient, came out of my time as a seventh and eighth grade social studies teacher. I had a young lady named Cameron, and she was suffering with sickle cell disease. And I have the leniency as a middle school social studies teacher to do whatever. And I decided to do these professional career days where every week I would bring in a professional from, and I'm from Pittsburgh, so I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, from downtown or within the city to come and speak to the group. And when I announced that, she raised her hand immediately, said, "Could you bring someone from the Sickle Cell Society so my friends can understand what is going on with me?" And we did that. But before I did that, I wanted to educate myself on sickle cell anemia, sickle cell disease first. I started looking for books that kids would understand. And at that time, there was probably one book, and it was still not written for kids. Now there's probably like maybe three, four. It's still not, they don't do a lot for kids. So I just watched her over the year, and she had gotten really, really sick. I think it was just before Christmas the year, and she never missed a beat. A student, she would still push herself to come to school if she could, but if she's really sick, she still got her work, she was done, and never ever showed signs of like, I am hurting, I'm suffering, even when she was sitting there. So I said, I'm going to write a book about her to bring awareness. And also because I am
Mhm.
faith-filled, I wanted to also incorporate the spiritual aspect of what I believe as far as prayer and, seeking for healing. And she really was my inspiration for it. It's a fictional fantasy fairy tale, or it could be possibly true, but it is about a young boy, and his name is Sam. And Sam, he has a bout with sickle cell. He has a really bad bout, and the parents went to the church because they didn't know what to do, and they asked for help. A lady, her name is Miss Gertie, she comes to bring them some cookies and just to sit with them. She just wanted to be of service to them, and he got better. So every time he got sick, she would bring him these chocolate chip cookies, and he would get better. Eventually, she had to have to leave. He gets sick, and he's wondering, will he ever get better because she's not there? Well, some things happen, and he has a dream, and some things happen in the book, and lo and behold, the recipe for the cookies are there. So his mom and dad take the recipe, they make the cookies, and he seemingly gets better. But she said she put in the note what the secret ingredient is, and that's what the parents use for that secret ingredient. And the secret ingredient is prayer. And so I end up having like a question, frequently asked questions in the back, which just talk about what is sickle cell anemia, how do you cope with it, and can you help someone who has it? And then there's my cookie recipe in the back. So that's a long answer for your question.
What's
All
the other
good.
book?
It's
The
all
other
good.
book, Little Miss Tomboy, is really just a fictional work, a little bit about Charice in it. I added some brothers, but I always have been just the rough and tough. I'm the firstborn of four, so I've always been the rough and tough. I like to sometimes do the girl stuff, but at a certain point, this little girl, she gets forced to go to charm school. She has two older brothers and a younger brother, and she doesn't want to meet any girls. She's content with her brother siblings. She goes through this process and she meets and grows and learns with some girls, and she's like, "Oh, they're like me. We like to play in the dirt. Oh, we hate these dresses, but we look cute in these dresses." So they learn. But in the end, there's a surprise, and there's a reason why her mom wanted her to do this. And the surprise is there is another little baby coming, and she's going to be a big sister to a sister. So sure, mom and parents are getting ready, but it's a cute little chapter book for like second grade to just kind of discover and be okay with being both, as they call tomboyish and girly, and it'd be all right.
Sounds like something my oldest daughter would appreciate because she was the oldest of four, and there were many times where she had to step in and be the adult in the room whenever her mom and I were going in different directions. So I know how that is. All right, we've got 6 minutes left in the session. Who's our next person with a question for our speaker? Amy, David, Linda, Michael?
I do have a quick question.
Yes,
So,
Amy, go ahead.
Charice, when you at the very beginning, you spoke about thinking about your story, and when you said that, about 4 or 5 ideas kind of flooded my mind. And Trisha, I appreciate your story because that was significant, right? And it made me start thinking even more. So, so now I'm going down a wormhole, so to speak. How did you narrow your thoughts to really kind of lean into that one idea to develop?
I have a parking lot. I have a parking lot. I am the type of person that I get a business card because I think I'm going to buy or use a business or whatever. I will put that card in the parking lot because I know I'm gonna come back to it. But my ideas, all those things that I mentioned, they're in a parking lot. I plan to develop something for them because they're valid for me, and all those ideas you have are valid for you. But which one is present in the moment is what you're going to be looking for. Which one will you use? And then you can work on all of them at once, or you can just take time to work on one at a time. But for my nonprofit, I have 3 pillars that is foundational: identity, value, and purpose. So each of them have their own idea. Identity, who they belong to and whose they are. Value, they are priceless and blah blah blah. And then purpose, we all are born to do something. So all of those are separate ideas and they're separate stories. So I have 1,000 notebooks and 1,000 journals, and they have my ideas. And I'll come back. I'm like, oh, you know what? It's time for this one, and I'll come back to that. But that's really my scatter way of doing it. You probably could be more organized and categorize it however you want, but that's kind of how I write mine down.
No, that's a good method. So Trisha's got her hand up. Trisha, you're the last one.
Yeah, well, I didn't have a question. I was just gonna share
Oh,
just
sure.
a little tip and trick. And so with Amy's question, so yeah, like Charisse, I have literally, I would say thousands of items. But one really quick trick that I use and that I encourage folks is I have an Excel sheet. And I know everybody's not Excel friendly. You can use a line sheet of paper, you can use a journal. But what you want is if you just started to write down on every single line any memory that comes to you. My dad taught me how to ride a bike, when I swamped my knee, when I broke my leg, whatever it is, just write the ideas down. And if you start in the moment, like today, what's something that happened? Oh man, I got into it with my boss, and just write it down. And literally write down as many things that happened to you. And if you want to just start with like 5, that becomes your first column. And then the second column is, what did you learn from that? And what you're thinking about is, what you realize is you just have a whole list of things. Every single one of those lines becomes a potential story or a speech. So for me, I go through, I have literally thousands of things in my first column. And then the second column, it'll be, this taught me A, B, and C. Or it'll have one word. This is resilience. This is strength. This is forgiveness. This is, life ain't fun. And then that last column is, what is the key takeaway I want somebody to focus on? And that's how I sort it. So I may have a lot of things about resilience. If I sort that Excel sheet, each one of my lines that deals with resilience, I may have like 15 things that pop up. But literally, I can turn all of those into a signature speech, or I can turn all of those into short stories. So Amy, if you start in a space where, if you just reflect on today, reflect on your childhood, middle school, high school, when you got married, when you have kids, before you know it, just that exercise alone will start to prioritize just memories. And you can pick which one of those lines or memories you want to elevate into a story, into a chapter, right? And before you know it, you will have so many things to pick from. But if you have that category or that column where you have them sorted, this is about love. This is about, pain. This is about resilience. This is about my mental health. And once you realize that, you will sort. And someone may have multiple topics. But if you start an activity like that just within 30 days, if you just do it once a day, you'll have a masterpiece. And that right there turns into short stories, it turns into books.
Mhm.
You always have a life lesson, but you have to do it every single day. You can't go back and do your childhood now. I mean, you can't go back to your childhood for real, but you can think through the most impactful memories. But if you're living now, if you did it every single day, it's like journaling, but it's really simple. What's one takeaway from the day? What's one in action today that I want to just record?
Yes. She basically said the same thing. Your idea, your story, and your
Oh yeah.
transformation. It's right
Oh
there.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, all right, folks, it is 8 o'clock. And let's give our speaker,
Thank
Charice,
you.
one more big round of applause. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you so much. And so we have a little bit of a scheduling snafu. Let me get back to the gallery here. We have a little bit of a scheduling challenge because we have our speakers who have been kind of shuffling some things around. So the June 3rd speaker is not completely set in place. I will be putting things out on Facebook and other places, and then inviting all of you, of course, as I can to the next session of the engagement room, which will be the 3rd of June. But Sharice, do you have about 15 minutes where we can talk after this, where I can do a little separate, little extra segment?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, perfect. And we'll keep on going. But again, folks, thank you so much for joining us for session 18. I am currently in production right now, or not production, but in the planning mode for season 2. It's going to be a thematic type of a season where we're thinking about politics, we're thinking about creativity, we're talking about religion, culture, social settings, things like that. And all of you here, you could have a piece of that as a speaker or as an audience member. So I thank you so much. Thank you, Amy, Sharice, David, Karen, John, Mark, Sandra, Michael, Trisha, Linda, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and we will turn off the live for here and continue on from there.